already having 3 cars to deal with, it was hard to say no. So I didn't. The next day we went over and bought it from him. The car is a 1991 Pontiac Firebird coupe. This bird is equipped with a throttle body injected 305 small block Chevy V8 backed by a 700R Ford transmission. In 1991, this L03 engine was rated at a whopping 170 horsepower and 255 foot-pounds of torque. Sure, the car is dirty and doesn't appear to be in the best of shape, but let's see if we can get it started. I pulled the battery out of the 78 Firebird to give this thing a chance. It's too big to fit in the battery tray, but it should do for now. It turned over nice and easy, and it kinda wanted to start, but it did take some time. Once it got going, it ran nice and smooth. And for a car with the muffler sitting in the back seat, it's surprisingly not too loud. We gave the transmission and brakes a quick check, and after exchanging money and paperwork, I was able to drive it home. The 2 strangest things about buying this car were 1, that it actually works already, and 2, that it has paint. It's under all the dirt, so it's a little hard to tell at this point, but there's actually paint and clear coat underneath it. The car doesn't appear to be too rusty either, and for the most part, the undercarriage looks very solid. Now that our new project car is home and it's surrounded by its new family, let's take a good look at the car and talk a little bit about its history. The original owner put most of the miles in this car, driving it back and forth between Florida and Maryland all the way up until 2013 when my neighbor bought it. He bought it as his first car, and he really loved the thing. He drove it to work and back and all around town for a couple of years. But it is an aging car and had accumulated quite a few miles over the years and was starting to become unreliable. It was showing a lot of quirks and small electrical issues, and then one day the fuel pump failed and left him stranded. He was able to replace it, but in the coming weeks and months, issues kept arising. One day, the engine overheated pretty badly in traffic, so he had a shop replace the water pump and rebuild the cylinder heads. One of them had machine work done before being reinstalled. Then, not long after that, the entire muffler came loose and was dragging on the ground, and I guess that was the final straw. The tires are old, the AC doesn't work, the stereo doesn't work, the T-tops leak, the hatch doesn't close right, sometimes the headlights don't pop up, and at some point the odometer stopped working, so it's stuck at 146,000 miles. So he parked the car in his front yard, and that's where it sat for almost 3 years. We started this video on July 7th, 2018, but my interest in the car started long before that. Every time I left the house, I would see this car sitting in his front yard, under a tree, and surrounded by weeds. The previous summer, I had talked to him about it, and he said he would sell it for $700. By the summer of 2018, nothing had happened with it, and I decided I really wanted the car, so I was ready to haggle with him for a good price. But, as luck would have it, he came over during that party and offered it to me for next to nothing. Either that's some grand sign that I was supposed to have this car, or it's at least a convenient arrangement. So now that we know where the car came from and how it ended up as our next project car, let's take a look at what we just bought. The interior is a bit rough, and though not all the panels are installed, they were all included with the purchase, as were the remains of the muffler and tailpipes still sitting in the back seat. It's a good thing the car already runs and drives, because we have a lot of other things to take care of. These cars use a motor to lift up the back hatch, and it kinda sometimes works, at least well enough to get it open. The struts to hold up the hatch actually worked here, but then they never worked again. The trunk is filled with body panels, tools, and all sorts of strange goodies. My neighbor just really didn't want to deal with it. He said everything in there is yours. The car also has this retractable cargo cover, which surprisingly still works, even though it's a little bit squeaky. Now we'll take a good look at what's under the hood. The hood struts don't work at all, but luckily the purchase also included this nifty broom handle to prop the hood open. And there is our cute little 305. I'm hoping that this will be the most fuel-efficient vehicle I own, although TBI setups aren't exactly the most ideal for that. It's pretty dirty and has definitely seen some miles, but even if we're looking at 50,000 over what's on the clock, 200,000 miles on one of these old school 305s is nothing. All of the emissions equipment, and pretty much everything else, appears to be intact and factory original. And luckily, inside the air filter, the throttle body appears very clean. And now we'll take a look at the oil. Of course, ideally you would change the oil before starting an engine that hasn't been run for a while, but in this case I don't think it would matter much. The oil is at the exact right level and doesn't look too bad. So how about the transmission fluid? Obviously there's something in there because it does move. We can't check the level too accurately without the engine running, but we can get an idea of how much is in there and see what color it is. It's not bright red like new fluid, it is a little bit pale, but it looks to be in good shape. It doesn't smell burnt, and there doesn't appear to be an excessive amount of clutch material in it. Okay, so how about the coolant? The cap is a bit rusty, but doesn't appear too dirty. But the radiator isn't full of coolant, and everything has that red iron rust color. And the reservoir is just shy of completely empty. The steering felt fine while driving at home. How about the power steering fluid? It's at the right level and looks good enough for now, so we'll leave it alone. And we'll also check the brake fluid reservoir. The brakes feel okay, but that fluid does not look good. And now we'll take a look at the rear suspension and axle of the car. Going by the RPO codes on the label, this car has a 2.73:1 rear end. There's where the muffler broke off. We're probably going to have to replace a good portion of this exhaust. I was told there was an issue with one of the rear shocks, but I'm guessing this broken sway bar end link was causing the noise he was hearing. The car has rear drum brakes behind the snazzy aluminum wheels that appear to be in very good shape. It even has all 4 center caps and the lug nut covers. Even though the oil doesn't look too bad, of course, we're gonna go ahead and change it. The car was sitting for almost 3 years. I figure we should make sure the oil fill cap comes off before doing anything, and it was a bit of a struggle, but eventually we got it to come loose. And now that we know that that at least can be removed, we'll go ahead and clean it up and loosely install it again. And next, we'll lift the car off the ground. This is a bit easier said than done, as the usual jack, this 4-ton one, doesn't fit too well under that front air diverter. But it's good enough for now, and we'll get the car off the ground and jack stands under it so that we can drain out the oil. We can also take our best look yet at the undercarriage of the car. The body itself is very clean, although there are a few concerning areas like the fuel and brake lines to the rear. And also, quite a few cobwebs we're gonna have to watch out for. The oil pan drain plug is in good shape and comes out no problem. And there is all our oil. Again, all things considered, the oil doesn't look half bad. And there's no signs of metal or significant water contamination in the drained oil. To get a little bit extra out, we'll hand tighten the drain plug, and pour in maybe half a quart of Marvel Mystery Oil to help clean out a little bit more of what's in the bottom of the pan. And once we've let that drain out, we'll reinstall the plug and torque it to spec. Next is the oil filter. We'll start by cleaning out some of the local inhabitants to get to it. It's on there fairly tight, so we'll use an oil filter wrench to remove it. This chain and socket type is by far my favorite, although sometimes there's not quite enough space to use it. And now we can unscrew the filter in the usual, most messy way possible. It's best to change your oil on a windy day, so most of it ends up in your face instead of on the asphalt. With the filter removed, we'll clean up the mating surface and pre-fill the new one with fresh oil. We'll spread a little bit onto the filter O-ring and then reinstall that onto the block. These filters want an additional 1 1/4 past seal contact. Since everything is oily, it definitely makes it easier to use a wrench. But that doesn't mean you should crush the filter or just ramrod it on there. Then we'll get it nice and clean so the spiders have a new smooth surface to lay their eggs on. Then we can remove the oil fill cap, which definitely is not stuck in place again, in order to refill the whole thing with 5 quarts of 5W30. After around 88, all of the LO3s in cars used roller lifters, so no additional additives are necessary. Although at this age and with this many miles, I probably wouldn't have bothered running zinc additives anyway. Then we can retighten the oil fill cap, hopefully for good. Well, it would have been if the nut wasn't frozen to the stud, and the stud wasn't spinning in the coolant reservoir. And now that I've been challenged, I just really want to remove the thing from the car. So we'll take a Dremel with a thin cutoff wheel and... So we'll use a Dremel with a thick cutoff wheel to just remove the stud at the nut. Once it's cut most of the way through, we can just grab it and break the rest off. And then once we pull the hose off the radiator, we can finally remove the whole thing from the car. But what are we going to do about that stud broken off in the reservoir? It's clearly spinning in the plastic. We ended up welding a piece of threaded rod to the stud so that everything got hot enough that the plastic would melt a little bit around it and we could pull it through. And once the stud was removed, we quickly inserted a hex head bolt into the still pliable plastic. That alone held it secure enough that it wouldn't come out, but we ended up adding some epoxy on top of it just to make it really solid. Next, I really hate how gross that brake fluid is, so we're going to go ahead and pull some of it out and just replace it with new fluid. These big 100 milliliter syringes are the best for moving fluids around, and you can get them for under $2 on eBay. With most of the fluid out of it, we can see how gross that master cylinder reservoir is. After a fair bit of cleaning, we can see most of the plastic again, and we're just gonna go ahead and refill it with new fluid. Well, it's not the freshest fluid since it was opened a few months ago, but we'll go ahead and use it anyway since it's a lot better than what's in there, and we're gonna need to bleed the brakes and do some other brake work later. Then we'll gently press the brake pedal a few times to shift some of the fluid around and do the whole removal and refill drill one more time before filling the reservoir to capacity. Then we'll top off the coolant in the radiator. Here you see the reservoir sitting in there, but it's just on the stud and hasn't been fully installed yet. Engine bay. Every flat surface, including the engine itself, is completely covered in leaves and dirt and bugs. Then there's also that underhood liner. It's falling apart, although largely still in one piece. I'm sure it won't be that way for long. The fibers from it are getting everywhere, and I just hate working around this stuff, so we're gonna go ahead and pull it out. And with that done, we'll go ahead and pour a little bit of Marvel Mystery Oil in the gas tank to get ready to start it up. This is mostly just for kicks, although it does appear there's about 3/4 of a tank of gas in this thing, and it's probably at least 3 years old. So I'd like to go ahead and retrieve that larger battery that doesn't really fit in the battery tray and install the one it came with, which appeared to have been properly maintained by my neighbor. I had been running it on a trickle charger, although all the voltages looked good. So let's give that battery a try. Yeah, that seems pretty good to me. With all those ticking lifters, the engine sounds a bit like a diesel bus, but at least it started easily. Oh, and yeah, for once I actually got a car that has a working horn. Then we'll go around and make sure all the tires have enough air pressure. And then we'll do something I don't often do with my cars, but in this case is pretty critical. We're actually going to wash it. So we'll go ahead and drive it onto the grass in the backyard and get the pressure washer set up. As you blast away the layer of dirt, you can start to see the color of the paint beneath it. And in this case, the paint and clear coat are actually in pretty good shape. This is the original color of the car, but it does seem that it was resprayed at some point. There are a couple areas on the underside with a little bit of funny overspray, but overall the job was really well done. And we can't forget the wheels either. We're going to be replacing these tires pretty soon, but just for kicks, we'll clean them off as well. Every inch of the outside of this car is caked in dirt, dust, and pollen. But the pressure washer does a fantastic job at removing all of that, right up until it breaks. Right about here, the pump gives out, and it starts making some pretty clattery sounds, so it's safe to assume that it's dead. So, set back but not defeated, we'll go ahead and use a brush and soapy water to clean the rest of the car. It's not really ideal to use a brush like this because you can end up rubbing some abrasives and dirt and stuff into the paint, but it will get the job done here. And once we wash off all the soap suds, we can start to see the beautiful paint that was hiding under all that mess. In fact, the paint is almost too good looking. It's kind of annoying because it means I'm actually going to have to take care of it. But I suppose only time will tell how that goes. We'll make sure to clean every inch of the outside of this car, including the glass, and we'll even open up the engine bay and clean some of that out too. And once we've hosed all that off, there are a few things we need to take care of. Mainly, the coolant reservoir. It's hard to see since it is clear, but we epoxied this stud and now it is very securely in place. The little bit of deflection you can see here is actually the plastic of the reservoir flexing. And with that set up, we can drop it back into the car. First, we'll reinstall the plastic clip on the inside of the fender. Then we'll install a new washer and a lock nut into the wheel well to tighten down the reservoir. And of course, we'll reinstall the hose and the hose clamp. And we'll make sure the radiator and the coolant reservoir are as full as possible. And with all the caps back on, we'll close the hood and admire our new project car. I admit the 91 Firebird isn't my favorite of the generation. The front end of the earlier models is a little bit more angular, and I think I like that a little better. I also didn't really care for the Sport Appearance Package side skirts at first. That said, the more I have this car in front of me, the more I find to love about it. Despite already owning a Firebird, this one seems like quite a different beast. It's lower to the ground, much more streamlined, and it has that massive piece of back glass. And also, half the reason I wanted this car is because of the T-tops. Yeah, they have a reputation for leaking, yeah, they're not as convenient as a typical convertible top, and yeah, they don't offer the rigidity of a hardtop. But damn, they're cool. And with the T-tops out and the windows down, yeah, I'm fully in love with this car. This car still has some issues and needs a lot of work, but I can't help but feel incredibly lucky for basically having it given to me. I owe my neighbor a huge thank you for giving me the opportunity to take this car off his hands. And even if we put aside my growing affection for the car, it's also perfect for this channel. Because, well, it needs a lot of work. This car has already undergone a dramatic transformation and we've basically just hosed it off. We're only just starting. It also feels very at home with the rest of our automotive family, although that red paint shows up the others a little bit. In the first episode of the series for my 1978 Firebird, we talked a little about my personal and family history with the brand. I grew up in love with the cars, the emblems, and the name. In 1982, the first year of the 3rd Gen F body, my father went out and bought a Recaro edition Firebird Trans Am. He always loved that car. He drove it to work daily for years, and at every opportunity would drive the wheels off of it. And as much as I care about the 78 Firebird and cherish that connection, this Firebird is an even closer match to the car he loved. And that connection brings along with it a lot of cherished memories, as well as painful ones. So, in that way, maybe that's why I gave this car a longing look every time I drove up the street past it. And it's even more interesting the way this car fell right into my lap. It's not a direct connection because it's not my father's car, but in a way that's better. This car will always bring forth those memories for me, but at the same time, it doesn't carry that baggage with it. It is a different car. It is a newer model and a different color. It's not even the same trim package or drivetrain, and that helps me feel free enough to change it. It helps me feel brave enough to drive it. And there aren't any grand plans for this car. For now, driving it is all I want to do. This is only the very, very beginning of my experience with this car, of the story that we're building. And with a bit of help from all of you, and a bit of help from the past, and a whole lot of determination and new parts, I think this car is going to be something special.